everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from, for our webinar in collaboration with Bridges to Prosperity, a nonprofit dedicated to ending rural isolation by building bridges in remote communities around the world. We are kicking off a month-long project where you'll help label satellite imagery to train a machine learning model that predicts river crossings, and this data will play a vital role in supporting the planning and construction of rural transportation infrastructure. By the end of today's session, you'll know how to sign up, label imagery using Google Earth Engine, and connect with the team for support. So we're thrilled to be joined by two incredible speakers today leading this effort. First, we have Cameron Chris, a Director of Digital Technology at Bridges to Prosperity. Cameron leads the development of FICA-Map, a tool that predicts bridge sites, their potential impact, and he's also a National Geographic explorer with a background in machine learning and map-based storytelling. Joining him is Dr. Katie Falkhauser, a senior data scientist and postdoctoral researcher at the Better Planet Laboratory at CU Boulder. Katie applies machine learning and remote sensing to tackle global water and food security challenges. So together they'll walk you through the problem we're tackling, the technology behind the project, and how you all can get involved. So with that, I will turn it over to Cameron and Katie. Thank you all for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Elodie. Yeah, I'll just quickly introduce myself. That was a great introduction, but yeah, here at Bridges to Prosperity, we were focused on eliminating poverty caused by rural isolation, and I focus on how we can use digital tools in that mission. Today, I'm really excited to pull you all into this project that we have going on. I'll explain more in a minute. But I really want to hand it over to Katie really quick just to say hi and introduce herself. She'll jump in later in the presentation to give us a demo of everything going on.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. As Cameron said, and Elodie, I'm Katie. I'm a postdoc at CU Boulder in the Better Planet Laboratory, and we're a group of data scientists and academics and lawyers who really focus on building data products and services that can help solve problems in development for a better and fairer planet. And we really like doing this in collaboration with others, and we like to be multidisciplinary and like to conduct open science. So excited to be working with Bridges to Prosperity and also the Youth Mappers group today.
For those of you that are more academically interested, thinking about going into academia, I think Katie's job is a really cool example of someone who can really pull deep insights out of maps using really smart techniques. So I know we're all geospatially interested on this call, so I think learning from Katie throughout this project is one of the huge benefits. And just learning more about her work has been really interesting for me, and I hope it is for you all as well. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and start discussing the project that we have going on this month. I'm really excited to kick this thing off. I've been excited to work with you all in the past and really happy we get to do an official project. So let me make this presentation larger. Go. Okay. So today we're kicking off this project to map river crossings across the continent of Africa. Let me get to the next slide here. Before we do that, I want to set the stage of why we're doing this and explain more about what Bridges to Prosperity does as a nonprofit and why this project particularly is so important. So more than 1 in 7 people in rural areas around the globe struggle to reach critical infrastructure. When we talk about that, we mean markets, we mean economic opportunities, whether it be jobs or other opportunities, healthcare, and school. So when you think about where are people going, where do you go every day that enables upward mobility in economic terms? More than 1 in 7 people in rural areas have trouble accessing these things consistently. And this is a problem because when you can't access markets consistently, when you can't access school or healthcare, you remain poor, and it creates this cycle of poverty. It's a root cause for poverty is rural isolation. Um, the crazy thing is that you don't have to be isolated all the time to be impacted by this isolation. So even if, let's say, we really focus, we mainly focus here at Bridges to Prosperity and have in the past on, rivers and the isolation that they can cause. If those rivers only flood, let's say 5 or 10 times a year, and make them impassable, those flooding events still cause outsized impacts because people don't plant crops in their farm and in their farmland that they plan to get to markets because the flooding could happen during those times and greatly impact them. Families don't send their kids to school because they don't want them to get stuck on the other side of these rivers. And I don't know the economic or geographic backgrounds of people here, but you may come from a community that experiences periodic rural isolation, and you may even know these impacts far more than I do. But in our mission here at Bridges to Prosperity, we always try to measure this. We try to research these impacts, and we try to really quantify how these are impacting communities. But before I get more into that, I want to talk about what we do here and just a fundamental question of what is a trail bridge? You see a picture of a trail bridge on the right. These are the types of bridges that we've built in the past. And these bridges are meant for pedestrian traffic, so people walking to school, healthcare, markets, but can also handle bicycles or sometimes like small motorcycles as well. Um, they are much cheaper than like a road bridge you'd build. They're much cheaper than roads in general. The maximum price we have for one of these bridges is probably 100,000 US dollars, and the upkeep on them is very minimal, and they are very resilient and don't require much maintenance. They have outsized impacts on communities. I've discussed this before, or I kind of mentioned this before. But they have a 49% return on their annual investment. But basically what this means is it's creating economic opportunity every year. It's keeping people these bridges keep people healthier. They allow communities to regularly access education opportunities, and just create a more healthy, more vibrant community where people are staying safer. Um, I want to kind of move through this. We could talk about this all day and I mean discuss the research behind it. But I want to talk more about what we've done. We've built 500 or at this point almost 700 of these bridges worldwide. We are now changing our approach. So previously we built many of these bridges, but we're at the point now where we want to amplify our scale. We want to scale this project. We want to build more of these bridges in more places. And what that means is we need to invite others into this project. So we need to get governments involved. We need other builders involved. We need more people building these bridges than just us. And so we need to help and make this easier and do what we can to develop tools to point out where these bridges are needed and enable others to also build these so that we can build these together and get to scale much faster. Right now, we're focused on East Africa as one of our major focus areas, but in this project, we're actually looking at the continent as a whole because eventually we want to scale our digital programs across the continent, if not the world. I do want to touch on this idea of how our digital projects play into what we do here at Bridges to Prosperity. I'm talking about physical bridges. I'm talking about communities getting to healthcare, markets, things like that. But what is the digital, what do our digital programs have to do with that, and how do they help? Well, we talked about scale. And if we are sending people out to find out where bridges are needed in every project or every place we work, that's a lot of time and money. What we can do here at Bridges of Prosperity is we can design algorithms that help us um, that help us do our job more efficiently and do our job in more places around the world. And so most of our digital programs here are meant to help do our job more efficiently, scale the jobs or the work that we do, and make it easier for others to build trail bridges as well as ourselves to build trail bridges, and then predict that impact as well. So we also want to use our digital programs to predict if you built a trail bridge in a certain location, could we expect to see economic opportunities increase more? Or is this an area where we'd see a lot of educational increases or benefits? So that's the type of research we do with our digital programs. One example of this is our past work on something called waterneck. This is something that me and Katie worked on as well. Katie, like she said, works out of CU at Better Planet Lab. And what we realized was that 60% of our bridges were on unmapped waterways. So we are building bridges over real water, and then we look on a map and that water's nowhere to be seen. And that's not uncommon in rural areas. So last year around this time, me and Katie's lab worked on a project to map waterways globally. And we were very successful. We mapped waterways around the world and tripled the number of waterways that are currently mapped, and then we published that data openly so anyone can access. I'm happy to share more about this later if anyone wants to access that data. But this is tremendous for us because now we can use this as a magnifying glass to look for places where people are crossing rivers. And so this is bringing us to what we're doing today. We want to find, well, if we could find everywhere a footpath crosses a river, hypothetically, this would help us identify, or this would identify every place where there could be a barrier to access. So not every place a footpath crosses a river is an access issue. Sometimes it's quite easy to cross these rivers and they don't cause access issues. But oftentimes they do. And when they do, it's where footpaths are crossing rivers. And so we have a model that predicts the impact that bridges could have. We know where the waterways are now, and there's this crucial missing piece of where do paths cross rivers? Can we find those things? We can find them if we look on satellite imagery. Here's a few examples of what these look like. Here's one example. This seems to be more like a wider path, maybe a track going into a dried up riverbed. And you can see that this is probably used as a crossing location. So that's one example. We can see that. Here you see a path. It divides into these three paths here, but you can clearly see them leading towards the river and then infrastructure on the other side. So this is probably used as a crossing as well. Here's a pretty obvious one. Here's a river that runs through here, a clear path that goes up to the river, and then a path emerging on the other side. So we can see these in satellite imagery. And so that's where Katie and her team come in. So we want to work, we are working with their team to build an algorithm that, similar to our waterways algorithm, can find patterns in satellite imagery. And then we can find these locations where paths are crossing waterways. I oversimplified that, but that is the general focus of this project. And to train that algorithm, what we need is your help to label 10,000 images. If we can label these 10,000 images, this will be a kickstart to this project, and we will use this to train an algorithm to find these places around the globe. Okay, so the next steps here are going to be a live demo. But let me stop sharing my screen, see if there's any questions that we need to answer off the bat. Doesn't seem like any have come through in the chat yet. So let's just keep our momentum rolling here. And Katie, I'm going to hand it over to you to start kicking this off. So what Katie's going to share is she's built a custom app in Google Earth Engine that facilitates us to do this labeling project and have your results go straight to their lab and for her research team to look at. So she's going to walk through what that application looks like and how that process will go. After the fact, we're going to share a document where this is written out We're also going to share like a YouTube video that's like a short video of like how to do this. None of it's that complicated, but there are a certain series of steps that we have to follow. So I'm going to hand it over to Katie, and then I'll jump back in after her, and we'll keep chatting here. We'll have about 10 or 15 minutes for questions too. So if you have any, drop them in the chat or ask them later. All right, Katie, take it away. Katie, you're on mute.
Thank you. Too many screens, too many things going on. First, I just wanted to show an example of this app before we really get into the details of how to sign up and how to use it, just to orient ourselves to kind of the task at hand. So it's going to be in Google Earth Engine. And it will look something like this, where an image of about 200 by 200 meters will display somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, and you'll be asked a series of questions. The first is about the evidence or presence of waterways in the image. We've identified sites where we know that WaterNet, what the product Cameron was just talking about, has predicted either flowing water or the likelihood that water would flow during high precipitation events. So we'll talk about this a little later, but how to look at this image and try to decide whether what waterway would be present. I'll go through this quickly, but then it'll also ask about footpaths. And so you'll be asked to annotate all the footpaths just within this bounding box, this black square, in each image. And then you'll also be asked just to confirm or deny whether there's an existing man-made bridge. And we'll kind of discuss the difference between man-made bridges and perhaps something that is more natural or temporary. And then finally, you'll just be asked to place a point within the box to know that you've completed the image. You'll save and you'll go on to the next image. And so you'll do this process. Each annotation set has 100 images. So at minimum 100 times if you complete a set. But we can also talk about if you're really keen on this activity and you're finding that you're going through the images quickly, you can always check out another annotation set. So this is just the app. This is kind of what we'll be discussing today and how to get there at the very end. I'm not monitoring the chat right now, so if there are any burning questions, please speak up, or Cameron, if you want to jump in with anything you see.
I'll monitor the chat and let you know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about how you can join this effort. So after today, by joining or registering for this webinar, we'll send you an email with a Google form and the opportunity to sign up to become an annotator. This is what the form will look like. It'll ask for your first and last name. I'll do an example for myself. My name is Katie Finkhauser. Oh, then we're interested in where you are and who's contributing to this effort. We want to recognize everyone's contributions. And it's interesting to know the demographics of the youth mappers involved in this work. So I'm in the United States of America. I live in Boulder. And my academic institution is the University of Colorado. This is also how we're going to kind of track what youth mappers chapters are participating and hopefully recognize the efforts of individuals as well as chapters. And then finally, these are the only requirements needed beforehand to start this activity, and that is having a Google account. So it's obvious if you have an email address that ends in @gmail.com, but it's less obvious when institutions also have Google accounts associated with their institutional name. So actually, my professional email address, katiefinkhauser@colorado.edu, is connected with Google. You can check whatever email address you're going to use. I've linked here. Do you have a Google account? It'll kind of link you to more information about checking whether you have a Google account or setting one up. So I can also answer questions about that if there are any there. So I do have a Google account. If I didn't and I still wanted to participate, you would need to look into creating like a Gmail email address. The second question is whether you're an existing Google Earth Engine user. You can check whether you are or not by clicking this link as well. It'll pull up the code editor. I am an existing user, so this is why it pulled up to my existing scripts and as well as my existing projects. If I wasn't, this would just go to a different welcome page asking you to set up a username. So that's just a prompt to get started with becoming a Google Earth Engine user. This question is just which of your accounts is a Google account that you'll be using for this activity. This question is important because this is how we will give you the correct permissions to begin this activity. So give us your email address, whatever one you'll be using for annotating. There's an opportunity, this question isn't required, but if you have another primary email address instead of your Google account, which it's easier to contact you and it's easier to send updates or instructions or troubleshooting, you can give your address here too. I don't have one, I just use my professional email for everything. So I will submit this form. Either Cameron or I will see your response come through. And once we have, it might take us a couple days once you've submitted this just to catch up with the requests. But you will receive an email that looks something like this. You have been added to the Bridge the Gap Annotators group, Google group. And just to view some resources and materials and to get started with the annotation, you'll just follow the link to look to joining the group. And that's going to pull up our welcome page for the Google group. This message will be here. It's the welcome message. You can get more information both about Bridges to Prosperity and the Better Planet Laboratory. That just links to our websites. And then there are short instructions about how to get started, which we're going to go through step by step today, as well as more detail for each of these steps is provided in the written instructions that Cameron mentioned we'll send out after this webinar. Okay. Just pausing for questions about this first initial step.
Yeah, and that was a lot. It was like a lot of intricacies. Again, we'll send out links to sign up. We'll send out the step-by-step. And just know there might be a slight delay between you submitting your information and getting added to the project. We'll do that as fast as possible, but it is a manual process. So if Katie and I are sleeping or off for the day, it might take 12 hours or so to get you added to the project. So just be aware, we'll do that as fast as possible.
Okay. So once you've gotten to this point, you can get started with annotating. We're asking annotators just to take 100 images at a time and annotate those in order to kind of create batches. So more people can be working on different batches at the same time and we don't overwhelm you with a bunch of images up front. So we're calling it check out one of these annotation sets of 100 images. You'll follow this first step to a tracking sheet. It will look like this, where we'll have a sample set ID, just a reminder of how many images are in the sample set. Most of them are 100, just the last one is not, that Cameron has already signed up for. Thanks, Cameron. Just because we didn't have an even number. So you'll go to the first row here that doesn't have an annotator. I'm the first annotator, it looks like, for this the top of this spreadsheet. So I will place my email address here. And now that I have assigned that sample set to myself. So the next person that comes in, the next annotator that signs up and wants to check out a set should go to the next available line. So don't overwrite someone's information. The row 2 and this sample set that starts with T8W is already accounted for and already assigned. So the next person would go to row 3 and check out that set. Keep note, you can come back to this sheet at any time, but keep note of what your sample set ID is. We'll need it later for just keeping track of your progress and for exporting your progress to us.
I will also say, try to keep the images, so you'll be labeling. Try to update us on the number you're on. If you're on image 50, just try to add that periodically. We can also check that on the back end, but it's easier if it's marked here. Second thing is if you check out a batch of images, but you're not making progress, let us know if you want to let someone else take those images. And if we don't hear from you and we don't see progress, we'll reach out, but we might also kick you off of that batch. So we'll make sure to reach out, and you have time, so don't stress. But if we're not getting much communication back and we don't think progress is being made, we might remove your email address from the batch of images. But we'll let you know first. And for people that are labeling a lot, we'll try to update the community if there are more batches available once these are all filled. So anyway, back to you, Katie.
Thanks, Cameron. So I've checked out an annotation set. I'm going to go back to the instructions to see what's next. I'm now going to open a version of that annotation app I demonstrated at the very beginning and create a local version where I can save my annotations. So all I did was, from this welcome message, I followed the link in step 2 to open the annotation app. It opens Google Earth Engine. And you'll see that the link is just shared. This is not a local copy yet. You can tell because it says link with a random string of numbers and letters. So the very first step we want to do, so that we don't lose any of your progress and you can come work on this and you can leave your computer, or just be certain that if like your computer crashes or your internet dies, we can save your progress. So the best way to do that is save a copy of this script to your local account. I guess one thing before we do this, and this is in the written instructions, so I don't have a good example of this just because my workspace is already set up. But the first time you do this, you want to create a new repository for just this project, whether you've been using Google Earth Engine before or not, just to keep everything clean and organized. We'll create a new repository. It'll be here on the left-hand side under this new button. You'll choose the option repository. It'll already be filled in with users. Frankenstein is my username. It's a joke on my last name, but you will have the chance the first time that you set up a Google Earth Engine account to choose your username, and it will be unique to you. So then you can call your repository anything that you want that you will remember is dedicated to this project. So I'll call mine Youth Mappers Crossings, and then you'll create. It'll appear here in the left-hand side. So now I have my own repository for this project. I'm also working from the project called B2P Crossing. You won't choose that name. Once I receive your emails and get you set up for working with this project, you'll be added to our Google project called B2P Crossing. And just make sure, if you have used Google Earth Engine before, you may have different projects you can work from, and you just want to make sure you're working from B2P Crossing. Okay, so we have our repository, we have our project, and we have our Google Earth Engine workspace. So now we save a copy of this script to our workspace. The save button is grayed out right now because we have not made a change to the script. So Google Earth Engine thinks there's nothing to save. The easiest way to save a local copy up front and immediately, which is just good practice, is we'll make a very small change to the script and then save it. So I'm just going to place my cursor on the first line and press enter. So I didn't change the script meaningfully in any way. I just created an extra space, but now the save button becomes active. So I will choose this down arrow and do save as. This is where you'll want to remember your annotation set ID. So I will go back to the tracking sheet. I'm going to copy my annotation set ID, and I'm going to use that as my file name to keep all of this organized. Make sure if you have multiple repositories that this saves in the correct repository. I already had one called B2P Crossings, but actually I just created one that was called Youth Mappers Crossings. So I'll select that option and save this script for this annotation set. So we'll save it. And we'll know it's saved because now the name changes to the annotation set ID, and I see a copy of the script here. So at this point, we would be ready to start annotating. And the annotation will, this app will prompt you to answer the series of questions on this right-hand panel. So you'll mostly be interacting with this right-hand panel here. To get started,
One second, Katie. I'm gonna just jump in really fast here too. This is necessary to get started on a batch. Once you do this, you don't have to do this again for that batch. You just have to make sure you're in that project. So just know, yeah, and it goes quite fast when you're actually going through it. So anyway, you'll stand this up, you'll be in your project. So most of your time labeling will be doing the process Katie's going to show you now.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. That was a good call out. So this setup just happens once, and then now that it's saved, you can come back to the script and just begin annotating here on the right-hand side. So we ask for your email address again, just to be able to tag who is working on this annotation set when we export it. I have a really long email address, so I might copy this at some point and just paste it in. But here is ask for the unique identifier of the annotation set one more time. So that's how we're keeping track of the batches, both on what displays for you and also what gets saved and transmitted to us. So either I already have it copied, so I'm going to paste it again in there, or you could copy it from the title of your script or return to this tracking sheet and grab it once more. But you want to make sure that this matches what you have assigned to yourself. You press the button submit, and the app will now center on the first image of that. Oh, actually, we need to start annotating, and then it will center on the first image. We'll return to whether when to use this second option of choosing the image number, but since this is our first time annotating, you can just press this button, start annotating. So this displays our first image. This is a progress bar that will just keep track of the number of images in total that you have completed. And then also if you return to your work later after saving on maybe another day, this will also update and tell you how many are remaining after you've done a few. And I'll show you an example of that as well. Then we have some buttons that you can move to images. Sorry, my internet's being a bit slow. So these buttons just allow you to move forward and backward through the images. And then the following questions are the actual annotation task. So we'll do this one together. The first question, like I mentioned, is there evidence of a waterway or seasonal waterway within the box? So one thing that we want to stress is that we're not only interested in cases where water is present at the time of the the image was taken. A lot of satellite imagery that is mosaicked or stitched together is taken at different times of the year and is typically taken during cloud, like typically needs to be taken when there are no clouds present in the image, and that is more likely during dry season. So that's why you may not see water in the image. However, based on the WaterNet product that the Better Planet Lab and Bridges to Prosperity have developed, we have predicted that there should be water in this image, or at least some evidence of water flows in this image.
Yeah, and I'm gonna actually jump in here and talk a little bit. It's kind of an art to find a waterway in satellite imagery. It sounds easy, but it's actually a bit tricky. So with Katie still sharing her screen, I want to talk about some clues that waterways can have. The first clue is often more dense vegetation. So if you're looking at this, you can see that these vegetation lines, like this dense vegetation in the lower right-hand side of the box, that to me already signals there's probably a waterway underneath those trees. The other thing that I do, and this is usually my first step when looking for a waterway, is I zoom out. So Katie, could you zoom out? And you as you zoom out, you start to see patterns. And this is a very clear one here. You start to see either that dense vegetation or actual water near the box. So in this case, we have that diagonal line cutting through, and that starts to really emerge as a waterway. And you can actually kind of follow it and maybe look for an unforested area nearby where you might actually be able to see water or double check that it's actually a waterway. Some of these are really hard though. So I want to mention that every box has been predicted to have a waterway, and we need you to do your best to find it. So I need you oftentimes to zoom out and find the closest waterway. And if you do that, you can kind of trace the pattern that you see moving towards the box. There are going to be cases where we got it wrong and there's like not a waterway and there's not any sign of a waterway ever being there. And in those cases, just say, no, the waterway doesn't exist. But we're going to have to get creative together and really do our best to really dig deeply and decide whether there's a waterway here or not. So oftentimes finding the waterway is trickier. That's all I want to mention. We all have to do our best to find it. Once you do a couple, you kind of start to notice the clues. But yeah, zoom out, check for patterns, zoom back in is a good rule of thumb.
Makuru. Yeah,
All right, Katie, back to you.
Okay. So as Cameron just walked us through, we're pretty confident that there's a waterway in this image. So for this question, we will say yes. It'll prompt you to place a point anywhere along the waterway in the box. So our focus here is not on tracing the waterway in the image. We will spend more time tracing the footpaths, but we want to just confirm that there is a waterway in the image and roughly where it might be. So you're already this will already activate for placing points. So all you need to do is now identify where you think that waterway might be. So Cameron mentioned here, there's some dense vegetation. I also kind of see maybe some water here where the trees don't cover as much. So I'm going to place the water point right here. You can place more than one if you'd like. I kind of want to indicate that this might be like also a branch of the waterway, so I'm going to place one here too. It's not required to just place one, at least, if you are reasonably confident that there's a waterway. If there isn't one that you feel is like you can't kind of convince yourself that there would be a waterway in that image, like Cameron said, we might have gotten it right. You can answer no, and then that question won't appear. I placed my points. I'm going to press done. It'll ask the next question. Do you see one or more footpaths within the box? Yes, I do. These are the footpaths that we're interested in. You can see them kind of crossing the landscape. So again, you'll just be able to start clicking, and now we're asking you to trace the footpaths as well as you can. You don't need to be obsessive about capturing every twist and turn of these footpaths, but try to follow the shape as well as you can. When you're done with one segment, you can just see here it's still active, but to finish this segment, I can just click the last point. And I can continue with other footpaths in the image. So I'm going to do a few here. I know we're maybe a little short on time. So I'll just do a couple. I'll finish here. We're asking that you try to be comprehensive within this box itself, but you don't need to go outside the box. And that's why I've stopped annotating here at this boundary.
I'd like to do one call out on footpaths too. This might be more obvious in a different image. Sometimes river beds look like footpaths, and sometimes they are used when they're not running with water. So use your best judgment, but if you think something is a riverbed, don't label that as a path. It could be both, but try not to label the where you think the river runs as the path. The second thing here is when we say paths, we want to label all non-paved paths and tracks. So even if something looks like it might be used as a road, if it's unpaved, we want to label that as a path. All right, back to you, Katie.
Thanks, Cameron. That gave me time to catch up with some of my annotations. Yeah, so try to be comprehensive with your annotations. For example, here I just captured a portion of this footpath I can see, but because it's in the box, I still wanted to capture it. I did footpaths here that are leading kind of these transects to this, what looks like a main path. One thing I wanted to mention is a couple like errors we've seen come up in the past is it can be really easy to create a start and end point that is the same. And if you do that, it will create an error and you'll be unable to export, which will be really hard for us to identify and help you like save and export your work. So I'll show you what to look out for. Here you can start to see kind of a track of the geometries I'm creating. So there's 2 waterways because I placed the 2 points for the waterways, and there are 5 footpaths because I've created 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 footpaths. The error will show up immediately, and the error looks like this. So I'll just create this one from the side so you can kind of see it. So I've placed 1 point, I've placed a second point. If I go back and I finish the line at the first point, at the starting point, and so I click the start and end point are the same, you see an error immediately show up. So just keep track of that. And then the way to address that error, if that happens, go immediately to the line that you just created and you can edit it. So right now I'm in draw mode with the crosshairs, the cross cursor. If you go to the left-hand side and you can choose the hand drawing, hand icon, now I'm in edit mode. And so see, I can click, but I'm not drawing any points. But if I click on an existing path I've already drawn, I can select it and I can either like change it. And so I've moved the starting point to be different than the ending point and that resolved the error, or I can delete it and start over. You can also do this with existing paths you've already drawn. In the case that you just like here, I want to make that match the image a bit more. So you can select it again and pull one of these dots that represent vertices to a different location. And so now I've changed that and I'm happier with how that looks and matches the image. So for this one.
Hey, Katie, let's jump through the saving and exporting because we only have 10 minutes left.
Okay. So I'll be done. Just to mention here, I don't see a man-made bridge. There may be a crossing, but I see no bridge, like the ones that Cameron showed in his presentation that Bridges to Prosperity or other groups may be building. So no. This, I'll just place a point in the box to indicate that I have completed the image. You can place that at any point within the square. Done. You'll have a reminder to save. Go up to this top banner and press the save button. It'll have a spinning icon while it's saving, and then once you can know it's been saved because now the save button has been grayed out. This is really important to do after every single image, because if something happens with your internet or your connection or computer, as long as you've saved frequently, you can always return to your account and continue progress. So let's say that I'm also ready to export. We recommend exporting either when you're done annotating for the day, so once a day, or when you're done with the complete set of images. So do it at both of those times. You'll follow these short instructions. So you'll click the button below, I'm done, export. There's a couple extra steps that you need to do though. You might have noticed that the task type tab got highlighted. So if you choose, then go to the task manager, there is now an unsubmitted task that you have created. This will not save or export unless you take the additional step of going here and pressing the run button. This is different than the run button here. So when you're exporting, don't use the run button at the top banner. You want to use it right next to the unsubmitted task. So we'll press run. We'll have a window pop up with our save settings. You don't need to change anything. These are all correct as they are. So you just need to press run again. And now the task has been moved to the submitted tasks list. And at this point, it is on its way to us. Just one more thing that I want to show about how to, if you do step away from your computer and want to start progress again, the way to do that would be pressing. So to get back to the welcome page, you will, I'm going to do it this way actually. So I'm going to refresh my page, say that you close your browser and you want to go back to Google Earth Engine is beginning annotation. When I open it again, it doesn't pull up the script I was just working on. So each time I need to make sure I go to the script that I saved and open it. So as you're starting, just make sure that the title of the script is the annotation set that you're using, and all of you can see all of my work is there. To restart the annotation, you now can use this run button at the top banner. And you can see it opens that panel again. And this will save your progress as well. So you can choose to go back to the number that you just ended on. We ended on image 2. Or if I press start annotating again, the app will immediately take me to my last image that I was, the next image in the series of where I was working. And now I only have 99 remaining because I've finished one image. Okay, that's the most of the workflow. The only other thing I want to mention is if you are done with your annotation set and want to check out another, follow the process from the very beginning. So you'll add your email address here. You'll copy this sample set ID, and you'll need to start a new script. So don't continue on the same script of the different annotation set. You'll need to go back here and open the fresh annotation app again. And if this loads, you'll see that it's that random string of numbers and letters at link again. And so I would need to make a change, save as with my new annotation set name, and then continue with that annotation set. Okay.
Thanks, Katie. That was a lot to get through. Yeah, walking through step by step, it seems intricate. Once you're in it, you're just labeling footpaths, labeling bridges. If it seemed intimidating, y'all are pros. You're going to be fine. I want to call out two things really quick. One, I know this community is pretty passionate about the OpenStreetMap platform and the data that's added back to it. I am too. I've worked with the OpenStreetMap community a lot, and have added my own edits. We are using Google Earth Engine in this case because we need to use their imagery to train the algorithm. So we actually tried to use OSM initially, but we ended up needing to build a custom app through Google Earth Engine to do this so that we could use their imagery and train the algorithm. So if you're wondering like, why didn't you use these other tools? We tried, but this is just a very intricate thing we needed to use this imagery for. Last two things before we end. There are going to be some rewards for contributors. Let me pull this up here. For all contributors that do at least 100 images, so one batch, we're going to share a digital certificate of appreciation with your name on it, and we'll email that to you to show that we really appreciate your contributions. And then for the top 5 contributors, so these are the people with the five people with the most images labeled, and if there's ties, they'll go to the people who labeled them the fastest. We're gonna send your very own Bridges to Prosperity t-shirt. So these are some of the great rewards. And then for the data and the future of this project, you all are helping us with this project. Katie's really going to be working with this data, and the outputs will all be shared openly, hopefully through academic papers. The model we develop, we will do our best to open source whatever we can, which is probably most of it. But we are also going to open source the data. So this data that we label, Katie will end up curating it into a machine learning data training set, and we're going to share that back on Hugging Face. If you haven't used this platform before, it's a way that you can, it's a place where data to train machine learning models is shared and machine learning models themselves are shared. So this means that anyone around the world can use this, including you. So if you label, you're helping us label this, you want to take a crack at building your own model, you can continue collaborating with us. So we're going to share this data back to the community. All right, we have 3 minutes for questions. I can stick around longer, but we're also available by email. I'm going to pause there and stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, to Adam's question, will there be a public GitHub repository to look at the data and models? Yeah, our group at least is very committed to open science, open data. So at the end of this project, we'll do make that available. If you're interested in the WaterNet model, there is a repository and data available too. Maybe Cameron can share those links.
Yeah, I was going to say, we open source everything we do here at Bridges to Prosperity, and I know Better Planet Lab does as well. So yeah, you can go through our GitHub and look at all sorts of interesting stuff we've done in the past. And as soon as we develop resources, we'll open source them, and we'll try to email y'all with information on where to find that stuff too. And yeah, I think there's been a few questions about the recording. That's going to be sent out after this. So there's going to be 3 things. Recording of this session, which is the most in-depth information about this. There's going to be a short YouTube video of just the process of like what Katie showed in the app. So that's like how to like sign up and create a project. And then the third thing is going to be written instructions. So those all 3 things will be emailed after.
And I would say, feel free to reach out to me or Cameron with any questions as you get started. We've worked on this for the last couple of weeks, so we know some common challenges and pitfalls too, and how to help, and just interested in getting to meet you as well. So I think our emails were in the presentation, but we'll send them. There'll be more chances to get those emails too.
Yeah. And then I just say, some parting words. Let's all just do our best here. There's we all know that satellite data can get messy. Just do your best. Try to label the paths where you see them. There's going to be edge cases. Use your best judgment. You all are probably better at this than me and Katie. So oftentimes I would trust you all to do these labels more than myself. So let's just all do our best in the labels and see where that takes us. All right, I'm gonna call it. I can stick around again for a little bit longer if people do have questions, but thanks for your time today. Elodie, I'll hand it back to you to close us out.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to Katie and Cameron and to Bridges to Prosperity for collaborating with us. We're really excited to start this month-long mapping project. As Cameron mentioned, more information will be sent via email to you all to sort of kick it off and how you guys can get started with all those links. So really excited. Yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.